Armond White coming into the studio. Of course, we're playing Michael Jackson for you because you've written about Michael Jackson. And also the bad seems to work because you've got this reputation. Although I guess this Ricky Gervais has replaced you as the most controversial
Who'd have thought?
host. You only got to keep the most controversial host of an awards ceremony for a very short time.
Oh, famous fleeting. But let me remind you, when Michael Jackson sings bad, he means bad as in great, as in wonderful,
Right.
as in fantastic, as in original. So
No.
I take all of those meanings.
Oh yeah, I would say that there is something about the position that you have now, because I can't think of a movie critic that is more talked about than you, and a lot of this seems to have come in the last couple of years, even though you've been doing this for a long time, since the Rotten Tomatoes, I think, on the internet.
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes have put a different focus on my work. I've been writing movie reviews in New York. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, and I've been writing reviews on a regular basis in New York City since 1984, starting at a paper called The City Sun, which came out of Brooklyn, a black-owned paper in Brooklyn in '84. So I don't want to anticipate your questions, but let me say that a lot of the internet chatter is about me trying to get attention on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
I write the way now, same way I wrote in '84. It's just all of a sudden a new internet audience has discovered me. They shouldn't think I'm doing things to be on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm doing things the way I've always done them.
Now, did it come to a surprise to you where suddenly, up to that point, you didn't think that you were a controversial critic, that people weren't saying that you were trying to draw attention to yourself? But since then?
I think I was always considered a controversial critic because I have my own point of view. And I think people are accustomed to reading journalists, critics who all think alike and all say the same thing.
Right.
I had that reputation at the City Sun during the 80s and 90s as well. Just wasn't on the internet.
But it was more like a one-on-one basis with you and your readers who would, I mean, let's face it, before the internet, you would read the people that you kind of wanted to read. They weren't thrown in with a lot of other folks. So you had your own followers, and of course filmmakers were going to feel about you anyway. But now since Rotten Tomatoes, it's somehow become a negative thing to people that your opinion is different than the mainstream.
Yeah, isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
After all, last time I checked, we are in the United States of America.
Right.
We are in a democracy where people are supposed to have freedom of speech. And it used to be a value to think for yourself and to be an individual.
Yeah.
But apparently not when it comes to consumerist media, where I guess a lot of journalists these days think everyone has to be in step and follow the line and say the same thing, and as as the guys in South Park say, bow down to Hollywood.
Well, you're thought of as somebody who likes to be controversial or contrary to public opinion. But when I read over some of your reviews, I think Steven Spielberg is one of your favorite filmmakers. And then also you like Michael Jackson. So that's probably the two most famous people in pop music and probably the most successful filmmaker we ever had. And both of those you're a fan of.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Isn't it funny that people who complain about me don't seem to know where I actually stand?
Yeah.
I think of myself as a pop culture kid. I love pop culture. I also write about pop music whenever I can, and I think popular culture is a wonderful thing, and it's great when a mass audience can respond to good work. And that's what I'm always looking for. That's why I write about movies, because sometimes because a good movie can ideally connect with millions of people. And when I think it connects with millions of people in a way that lifts them up as human beings, I'm all for that. But there's so much crap out there that I think it's incumbent upon any film critic to say when crap is crap. And people don't seem to like that these days.
Well, one of the problems you have is with film criticism itself now, right?
Sure. Sad to say, the profession I love, the profession I studied at Columbia, it's been destroyed recently, and it's become a shell of itself. Critics don't think like critics anymore. They think like adjuncts to the movie industry. They think they're part of Hollywood. We're not a part of Hollywood. We're separate from Hollywood. Our purpose is to keep an eye on Hollywood and to judge Hollywood, not to promote it. Most people, most critics think the job is to promote Hollywood. It's not to promote Hollywood. I get nothing out of promoting Hollywood. I'm trying to promote thinking and good art.
So when do you think it all started to turn bad? When did film criticism lose its way?
There are probably many beginnings of the end.
Yeah.
One of them certainly has got to be Roger Ebert. When he over-popularized film criticism on television and made it seem like it's the kind of thing anybody can do. Everybody has an opinion, but not every opinion is an informed opinion. Everyone has a right to an opinion, but really in media, in professional journalism, it used to be that in order to have a position at a newspaper or radio, you had to prove yourself qualified. You had to have credentials. You had to have background. That's gone to the wayside now. Now anybody can become a film critic, and what Ebert did was make it look like all you needed to do was have an opinion and have a glib opinion, which was a TV-friendly opinion.
Right.
And people mistook that for criticism. That's not criticism. That's just TV.
So it's not so much Roger Ebert's writings or any of his books or his columns.
Well, his writings are glib too, but the past 30, 40 years, our culture has undergone a dumbing down. People don't read. I think if they read Roger Ebert, they'd still be reading at a fifth grade level. But they don't read him much. They watch him on television, and that's what they think criticism is. These days, they read his tweets. They think that's what criticism is. It ain't.
So, the blogs and everybody that's coming in now, because the newspaper critic is not looked at, I don't think, the same way, because there's so many other critics that are out there, and most of these people you don't even consider to be critics.
No, but a terrible thing has happened with the internet. There's so many voices, there's so many opinions out there that people can't tell the difference between a review on the New York Times and a review at some very nicely designed blog that looks professional but is as amateur as shit.
Yeah, and at the same time, the movie studios kind of play to those same bloggers in the same way. I mean, now they're being courted by the studios.
Well, movie studios don't respect criticism. They've gotten to a place now where they understand that they can manipulate criticism and they can use critics.
Right.
Which means our connection to the studios it's a very interesting symbiosis. They provide us with screenings, and we agree to write about their movies, which is a way of giving them publicity. But what I don't do is I don't agree that I'm going to like what you let me see. Part of my tacit agreement with any studio publicist is that you will let me see it, and you will respect me enough to have whatever opinion on it I have. You do not demand that I like it, because I don't agree to that ever. A lot of my colleagues think differently. A lot of my colleagues think we are indebted to studios because they showed us their damn movie. They think that we are obliged to like it. No.
And these are the same people that you're watching films with, I guess, most of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you're watching films with other critics at screenings. Do you guys sit around and debate what criticism should be, or you just watch the movie and go your own way?
Oh, no, that never happens. Usually conversation happens among cliques. There are cliques.
Okay.
There are cliques in professional journalism the same way there were cliques in the junior high school cafeteria. So cliques talk to each other. If you're not in the clique, you don't talk to those people.
And some of these people you've known for years, I imagine, right? I mean,
some of these people I've passed in hallways and sat next to for years.
For decades.
For decades,
still
even,
not,
some of them.
Still not being in any real conversations after all this time.
No. You know, I should probably tell you. So I studied film at Columbia University. That's where I got my MFA in history, theory, and criticism.
Yeah.
And one of my instructors there was Andrew Saris, who at that time was the critic for The Village Voice. And I remember some of us students, we asked Saris about, how do we get into the business? What do we, can you introduce us to people? Don't you know other critics? And he said a very interesting thing. He said, I don't know. He has a growly voice, more growlier than my cold voice. He says, I don't know these people. I'm in a room with them, but critics don't talk to each other. Right? Writers are very lonely people. They don't know how to socialize. And at first, I thought that Saris, who I respect enormously, I love him. Mm-hmm. At first, I thought he was just putting us off. But once I got into the profession, I realized he was absolutely right. Critics don't talk to each other. We all think we're right. Mm-hmm. And so there is no conversation among us.
Well, what about now where they'll have junkets and things like that? I mean, have you ever attended, have you ever let them fly you out to Los Angeles or on a set somewhere?
Sure.
And
sure, I agree to that. I agree to that, but I can't be bought.
It's still a thing of, but knowing the fact that you're being treated in such a way, and of course, if they don't like you, you won't be invited back. That still doesn't sway opinions.
No. I think one difference that I have with some of my colleagues is that I was trained as a journalist. Mm-hmm. My first college degree is in journalism. My BA is in journalism, and this is a while ago. So I was trained in the kind of rules and principles that journalism used to have. Those rules may not obtain anymore. And the way I was trained in journalism is that movie studios or record companies, they may fly you somewhere, they may give you a dinner, they may let you meet the star. Mm-hmm. Your only agreement then is to write about it. You don't agree to write about it the way they want you to write about it. You simply agree to give them writing in kind. And that's my attitude about junkets. That's the way I approach junkets. I'll go on a junket because sometimes you can get good information out of it as well as a nice trip. But I never, ever agree that I'm going to like your movie. And that's my freedom as a journalist. That's a key part of my integrity as a journalist. Because you put me on a first-class airplane doesn't mean I'm going to say your movie's great if it's not. And I never have. And that's to say, I have not been on a junket since 1990. Because the studios run the junkets. They can run it the way they want. And I think it was 1996. 1996, they realized we can't get what we want out of him. Yeah. He can stay home, which is fine.
But do you feel like most of the people that go there, it does somewhat cloud the criticism because it feels like, hey, I owe these guys. They took care of me.
Yeah. No. To try to be kind about it, I think that's because they don't have the training. Yeah. They don't have the background that says it's your right to not like the movie if you don't like it. Mm. That you are not beholden just because they gave you a trip, just because they let you shake hands with Tom Cruise. You're not beholden. My training taught me that. A lot of my colleagues simply don't have that training, so they just feel that they're indebted.
But does it ever cloud you also when you get to meet some of these people and like them? Like if you like a Tom Cruise, if you like a Marty Scorsese, will that still maybe cloud on the fact of how you're writing your next review?
Never. Because I've been kind of fortunate. So I started writing movie reviews back in junior high school, actually. Mm. And then when I was going to college, I went to Wayne State University in Detroit. And the college paper at Wayne State was called The South End. And it was it was known as a radical newspaper politically. And it made a big splash in that town. There were two daily newspapers, and the South End became a kind of unofficial third daily, even though it only came out Monday through Friday. People read the college paper, and at that college paper, I was a film critic. Back in those days, it was before the internet, before cable TV. Movies used to open market by market, right? Which meant that, for instance, that if Tom Cruise had a movie opening in Detroit, he'd have to come to Detroit himself and talk to the press in Detroit. Then he'd have to get on a plane and talk to the press in Chicago, talk to the press in Philly, talk to the press in San Francisco. Could take
a year to roll out a movie in those
just about. Days. Just about, and that's what movie stars used to do. So when I was writing for my college newspaper, because my newspaper was so widely read in Detroit, I met lots of famous people before I ever got out of Detroit. Mm-hmm. And I'm not fazed by famous people. So and by the way, when you come to Manhattan, you see them everywhere. Yeah, big deal. They're working folk just like me. So I'm not impressed at meeting famous people or at least not impressed to the point that I'm going to say I love your piece of crap.
Right. But even though you might like them as a person, even beyond the fact that they're famous, even like there's some people, I think their heart could be in the right place, but then they don't necessarily do good work or do good work forever. And I guess and every time that you walk in, there's got to be some kind of baggage that you're holding on to, right? With, well, this is the type of movies this guy makes. And,
Well, we're all individuals. We all have different pasts. We all have different experiences. We all have different emotional, psychological, political, sexual needs. And we want works of art to affect those needs and to affect those needs in ways that it's going to make us know more about ourselves and know more about others. Which is to say, I have to respond to a movie like as myself. I can't respond to a movie to please you, him, her, or anybody else. Only for me. And really, that's essentially what a work of criticism is. It's a personal response. Yes, I come with baggage, and the baggage is me and my personal history. And if the movie doesn't affect me and my personal history in a way that's of benefit to me, I'm going to stamp on it as hard as I can. I don't believe there's any such thing as an objective opinion. I think that's bullshit. I never promote that at all. There isn't. I learned that in journalism as well. There's only an objective point of view when you're writing a news story where you attempt to maintain objectivity. But in writing criticism, who wants objectivity? You want a personal response. You want the critic to bring everything they know, everything they've been through. You want them to bring that to bear upon their reflections of the work of art. That's what makes criticism worthwhile. That's what makes it worth reading, in fact. Just to write boilerplate, to write what everybody else does, why bother?
And there are certain things that I think have changed over the years. I mean, we've talked about Roger Ebert when he and Gene Siskel started their show. It changed things. But I also think in terms of what Harry Knowles did with Ain't It Cool News, changed the way so many young kids.
Sure.
Right. I think those are the two watershed kind of moments that took it away from the kind of background the way that you see film criticism.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. But something else happened too. During the 1980s. Media became more powerful.
Right.
A lot of that had to do with the Reagan administration and changes with the FCC. The way, in fact, that Reagan rescinded the Paramount decree from 1949 that decreed movie studios could no longer own their theaters or their venues of distributing movies, and Reagan rolled that back, which meant the studios got much more power, which meant the studios now could also own media. And they became much more powerful, and they exerted that power upon the profession of journalism, where publicists could demand certain things from journalists, and journalists had no backbone to say no.
Yeah.
But also they had no support at their own organizations. Editors and publishers went along with it and said, yes, we must promote our fellow industry. We in journalism must promote Hollywood. And so they began to hire writers who felt that way as well. They would, of course, only hire writers who didn't have the background and training in journalism that I had. They had to hire a new breed of writers who had no integrity as well as no study or understanding of the art form of cinema. That happened in between Ebert and Harry Knowles, and that was equally devastating. Because now what we're living with today is a profession, a journalistic profession that doesn't stand for itself, a journalistic profession that is in fact in cahoots with the Hollywood studios. Fox News owns 20th Century Fox and Fox Searchlight. It only makes sense that Fox News is only going to hire journalists who is going to promote their own product. And so even at a paper like the New York Times, even I'd say they hire journalists who think that way, who think that it's incumbent upon them to promote Hollywood rather than analyze cinema.
We kind of go, it had me thinking politically we're the same way, that Washington journalists are much closer. It all becomes about access and how close you can get to the president. And, of course, in the 1970s, when the Watergate story broke, those guys couldn't get anywhere near. And look, that's some of the best journalism we've ever had. But now, you know, you can become friends with the president.
Yep. Oh, don't get me started. With Obama handing cupcakes to Harry Smith on CBS, or Obama handing cupcakes to Helen Thomas for her birthday. Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah. So
anyway.
You actually think that we're better off when we're all on different sides of the fences and kind of keeping an eye on each other.
Journalism is supposed to be a watchdog in a way, and you know, my favorite H.L. Mencken saying is that journalism is supposed to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. And you can read into that as you please, saying that, meaning, I guess, that, you know, journalists ought to lean towards people without money, without ready access, and be skeptical of those with power. That sounds good to me.
Well, let's go back to the awards that you did with the New York critics that got you national press for apparently acting in a way that was unlike award show fodder.
Oddly, got me noticed for things that did not happen.
Really? Is that right?
Yes, because what appeared, it all started with an article on the Gawker website, an article that was written by a friend of an enemy, who the enemy being Jay Hoberman at the Village Voice. So a friend of Jay Hoberman wrote a lie, and the lie caught fire and is all over the internet. You know, it's like that old saying, a lie goes around the road twice before the truth puts its shoes on. Words to that effect. And that's what's happened here. Someone wrote on the internet a lie about what happened on January 10th, and unscrupulous people all over the internet picked it up and repeated it over and over and over again. That's what happened. Do you want me to tell you the fact of what happened?
I would love to hear the whole thing. Sure.
It was a beautiful evening on January 10th. As my third year as chairman of the New York Film Critics Circle, and I started the evening saying this is an evening in celebration of film and criticism. And then this asshole, Darren Aronofsky, comes up on the stage. He was there to present an award to his cinematographer for the movie The Black Swan, and he decided to do the stupid thing and take a shot at me, and said something to the effect that Armond White doesn't have any compassion, and my parents taught me that, you know, if you don't have anything good to say, you shouldn't say anything, which I thought was really stupid because that doesn't apply to critics. Right. So why would he even bring it up? So he said that, and you know, I have great respect for the New York Film Critics Circle because so many critics that I admired were part of it, were part of what kept it going for 76 years now. People like Pauline Kael and Andrew Saris and Vincent Canby. So I respect that institution. And I was the host for the evening, and I know how to be a host. And a host does not insult his guests, even when the guest is out of control and rude. So Darren Aronofsky had his little moment, and when he left the podium, I said it's okay. And because some people in the audience hissed him and booed him, and I said to the audience, "That's okay. That's okay. Darren Aronofsky reads me, and that's all I want. I want him to read me, and because he reads me, he knows the truth." That response got reported nowhere on the internet. Instead, Hoberman's friends lied, and this thing at Entertainment Weekly, Lisa Schwartzbaum lied and wrote a report that I was rude to the presenters. I've done the chairmanship at the New York Film Critics Circle for 3 years. I did it in '94, did it in 2009, and this year. And I've never been rude to a guest because that's not what a host does. Even when George Clooney showed his ass last year and insulted Rex Reed at the podium, I took it because I figure we're the hosts, we can take it. I would never insult a guest at that event, and I did not. But people on the internet decided to lie about it, and other people who were not there repeated the lies, and friends of Hoberman and Lisa Schwartzbaum repeated the lies. That's what happened.
Now, there wasn't a thing where you got up and thanked the other critics for not voting for a certain movie?
Oh, yeah, that was the end. Oh, that was the end of the evening.
Yeah.
That was the end of the evening. So at the end of the evening, after I thanked all the people who helped, the publicists and friends who had helped me put the evening together. And by the way, I also started out the evening thanking all the winners and presenters for coming here. And I said, I thank you for coming because your presence here says that you respect us. That's how I began the evening. And at the end of the evening, I said, I thank God that this night has come because now all the hard work is behind us. And I want to thank my colleagues in the circle for not voting a single award to the movie Greenberg. Now, some people think that that was out of line or insulting. I like somebody to tell me what part of that sentence is insulting. It's a thank you, and it's a thank you to my colleagues.
Well, I guess if you were involved with the movie, Greenberg, you might be a little hurt by it.
Well, I guess maybe I could have expanded that list and added like 200 other movies that did not get an award. But who wanted to be there all night for that? I chose Greenberg.
So why?
I chose Greenberg because it stank.
Yeah.
And all my colleagues in the room know that that I felt it stank. And so I said so. And I don't regret saying so because I think I said it in a proper way.
So why would these, you said the Village Voice was out to get you that night and also the writer for Entertainment Weekly.
Right.
Why are they out to get you?
Well, years. Do you know the movie Serpico?
Yeah.
With Al Pacino. When Serpico came out in '73, Pauline Kael wrote a review of it, and I think her opening line was about Frank Serpico, the New York cop who exposed corruption. And her opening line about the movie Serpico was that we still don't have a word for legitimate paranoia. And I love Pauline Kael's writing. It means a lot to me. But I always thought that line is not right. There is a word for legitimate paranoia. And actually there's several words for them. One is fear, one is caution. I'm not paranoid about this. Hoberman and Schwartzbaum don't like me. Mm-hmm. And really, I don't talk about these things in public. I talk about them now because they made it public. It was never my wish to make them public. There are a lot of people who don't like me. There are a lot of people I don't like. I don't talk about that in public, especially if they're members of the New York Film Critics Circle. I respect the circle. I respect that institution. And I keep my private thoughts about the members private. Mm-hmm. But they didn't do that. They attempted to smear my reputation. And I figured then I've got no recourse then except to defend myself. And the truth is my only defense. And part of that truth is that they just don't like me. Mm. And I do think that part of that not liking me is that I'm the only black man in the room.
So you really think it comes down to racism? After all these years, we're still at that point.
Sad to say.
Yeah.
And everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it.
So
I'm not the only one, and it's not new.
But everyone knows that those two people are racist, or
now they know.
Yeah.
Now they know, because the only way, one thing I regret about this profession is that it goes back to what Andrew Sarah said, that we critics don't talk among each other. Mm-hmm. We don't debate. We don't discuss. And instead, what Hoberman and Schwartzbaum have done is that instead of having a discussion, they told a lie. Mm. And they told a lie, I think, out of personal motivation. I could talk movies with people all day and all night. Yeah. If you want to discuss cinema, if you want to discuss politics or religion, I can do that. They didn't do any of that. They just told a lie to besmirch my character. And that's not being a good critic. It's not being a good person, frankly. It certainly is not being a good member of the New York Film Critics Circle, which is supposed to be unified. So they broke that unity. And in attempting to offend my reputation, I got to tell the truth. And though I said I made some snarky comments here with you recently, essentially, I don't want to talk about them as people because I loathe them. I don't want to talk about that, but I want to tell the truth that they lied, and ask people to consider what does it mean when somebody tells a lie, rather than arguing aesthetics or politics.
And there were feelings that you had of racism with these two long before this night?
Yeah, there have been things in the past, and racism is real, and we learn how to get along with each other, even so. Yeah. And as I said, I don't talk about them in public, but they decided they would talk about me in public, and it's really sordid. I wish they hadn't done it. But I think the only way to explain it is to explain it exactly for what it is, and it is a racist attack. But it also, I don't even know what percentage to give it. Yeah. It's largely a racist attack, but it's also largely, I think, intellectual jealousy, because I know my shit. Yeah. And they know I know my shit, and they're no longer the big dog in town. Often when Hoberman and Schwarzbaum and their friends write about me, they often refer to the New York Press as the free paper because it's an alternative paper that you don't have to pay for. And it's a kind of snide jab at me. Well, yeah, it is a free paper, but that doesn't mean that what I write in it isn't interesting or isn't good and doesn't appeal to people. But in their class snobbery, they think by calling it a free paper that somehow that's going to belittle what I do. Well, only in their eyes, and it doesn't stop the readership I get, because I like to think that people understand that I'm doing this for serious reasons and for sincere reasons, and they can't stand the heat.
When you see some of the other attacks at you, whether they come from the Rotten Tomatoes type people or whatever, do you think racism plays a part in all that, Armand, as well?
If you've read the comments, you know it has. It's just blatant there. I mean, it's alarming. It's so blatant. I mean, you would think who would say these things in public these days, but they do.
So how do you deal with that? I mean, how do you move through it?
Well, you move through it as black people have always moved through it in a racist country. You brush it off your shoulder, as Jay-Z says, and you push ahead anyway. Also, I was raised Christian, and growing up in the Baptist and Pentecostal church, there's a saying: they talked about Jesus. You think they're not going to talk about you? Which is not to compare myself to Jesus, but it's the background that prepares black people from the South. My parents are from the South. It prepares black people to know that offense is coming. Put on your raincoat, hold up your shield, because it's coming. You can't stop it, but you can't let it stop you.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like something that we would be doing in 2011.
Sure.
It seems like we would have moved past this by now, particularly in Manhattan and in the film community. You don't think that we'd be hearing charges like this?
Yeah, it's alarming. It's upsetting. I go back to my girl, Pauline Kael. She wrote a review of a Mike Leigh film in 1989 called High Hopes, which is a movie about a kind of hippie communist couple and their superior attitude towards a bourgeois couple. And in Pauline's review, she wrote what I thought was an amazing thing. She wrote, "The left are great haters." And it's true. They really know how to hate. Even though they profess to be liberal and open, they really know how to hate.
And it's a different kind of racism than just straight ahead kind of redneck racism. It's a difficult type of racism for you to fight. And that's why I think when these stories came out about you, nobody was thinking it was a racist attack. And I had no way expected you to say that to us today, that you thought racism was behind this.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to have to say it, but it's how I see it. In this incident and in others with those people. But, you got to consider also, so the New York Film Critics Circle has been around for 76 years, and its entire history, there have only been 2 black people in it, and I'm one of them. And I've got enemies, not because of anything I've done to someone, but simply because I'm there. And, not for anything I've done, because you can ask any non-biased person about my behavior on January 10th. I was a gracious host to everybody. I took the shit coming from those rude actors. I took it because it was my job to take it as the host, and I took it. I didn't do anything wrong. It's just that those 2 don't like me.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's high school, isn't it?
It is.
We never get out of high school.
Yes, it's the strangest thing. Is like you would think that, particularly in certain jobs, and like you said, I mean, it's definitely Hollywood is thought as the left, and the media is thought as the left, and here you are with the same kind of problems that we could have been bringing up, and it was 50 years ago.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the book that you wrote about Michael Jackson. As I said, not only you're an admirer of Michael Jackson's, which would surprise some people. What was it about Michael for you?
Well, he was there all the time since 1969. He was there all the time making music that made life better.
Yeah.
A good soundtrack for my growing up and for millions of other people. When he died, I felt the loss, And so some friends encouraged me to gather together the things I had written about Michael over the years. And that's what the book Keep Moving is. It's called Keep Moving, the Michael Jackson Chronicles. And it's a collection of the articles I've written about Michael, since 1982, since the Thriller era. And there are like several other new pieces that I wrote for the occasion. But it's basically a collection of pieces from the past. And they show, I guess, the evolution of my response to Michael, as well as chronicling his career from 82 up to the end, or certainly up to the Blood on the Dance Floor album, which I think was 80. I think it was 98. And in the book, because it's a collection, you see my attitude towards Michael Jackson move from not being terribly impressed with Thriller, because critics can be snobbish.
Sure.
And in 82, I thought, Thriller is nothing compared to Prince's 1999.
Yeah.
So I figured it's also important to leave that in the book, because that's what I wrote.
Yeah,
it's there.
The way you felt at the time.
And then as the chapters progress, as the collection updates itself, and his albums came out that impressed me more and more impressed with his social consciousness and his political perspective, and that was really more up my alley. And I began to respond to albums like Bad and Dangerous and History Part 1 and 2 and Blood on the Dance Floor. And so the book chronicles my evolving response to Michael, as well as his evolvement as a politically conscious artist.
I still don't think that we've moved on past his era in terms of his influence is still almost in every video, and as particularly anyone who dances.
Sure.
But for me personally, I still never got over Little Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. I mean, to me, it was the most amazing thing that I've ever seen in my life, and I still go back and watch that. I'm like, that little kid was a genius. He was a genius.
Very amazing. And I also occasionally do a music video show at the Film Society of Lincoln Center, where I talk about music videos that are also works of art, in my opinion. And over the years, I've shown lots of Michael Jackson videos. He was a music video innovator. He was a great visual artist, even though he couldn't get any access in Hollywood. He found his own way, and he made movies on his own terms, which were those music videos which you might remember when there was primetime premieres of the Bad video, of the Black and White video. It made an impact on the culture.
Yeah, they were,
and not because of hype, but because each one was new. Each one set a new standard.
Oh, you had Scorsese and John Landis and all these people working with him, where other people were still shooting on video.
Yeah.
It was amazingly so far ahead. So to get that, Keep Moving, that's the Michael Jackson Chronicles, we actually write to you for this. This is at Resistant Works WDC.
Yes.
At yahoo.com.
Yes.
Armond, it was so much fun to have you come in.
I've enjoyed it, Ron. I thank you for the opportunity.
And I'd like you to stop by anytime. And you're a very interesting guy, and completely out of step with everything else that's going on in the country today. I don't know anybody else.
Well, Martin Luther King said, what did he say? That history tends towards justice. Mm-hmm. I think good criticism tends towards the future of art that will last. And though some of the things I write may not be popular today, I like to think that I'm writing for art that's going to last.
Well, the funny thing that you even bring that up is, like, you get the feeling some people aren't even making movies like they're going to last. That's so, true. Of course, the criticism is going to fall the same way. But when most people are out there just writing about whether something is awesome or, this just kicks my ass, and you can see that it's almost like riding home with somebody in the car. They're not sitting down and putting a lot of thought into it. That even the people that would disagree with your criticism would have to know at least that you take it seriously.
I do. One question you didn't ask me is and I don't mind that you didn't ask me, but is who do I write for? I would say I write for anybody who's ever been moved by a work of art, not for someone who enjoyed crunching the popcorn along to a movie.
Yeah.
I think I'm writing. I ideally write for people who saw a movie and it touched them deeply, and as a result, they understand that this is a great art form.
Well, again, it's rare to run into people now who find anything precious. That you can. It's just about. It's a more cynical nature where we run down things or act like, reality shows or just fine to spend all our time doing. But for people to really sit down and hold on to something and say, "Oh my God, I love this," it's very rare. And I don't know maybe it's a self-protection that we've done, but we don't do that anymore.
Nah, the culture has changed, but unfortunately, but we can get those values back if we want them back.
Yeah.
Only if we want them back.
Armond White,